Trial attorney joins us on NewsNation Now. Your impression, just to follow up on Laura's report of this first day of the Trump civil trial. What's the big picture? What should be the headline out of this from a legal perspective?
I mean, from a legal perspective, it's the day where the lawyers tell the judge what he's going to hear for the rest of the next 2 months. And so we should be focusing on what the district attorney had to say, Letitia James, the person presenting this case, the attorney general, and what it is she intends to build on after her motion for partial summary judgment was granted. From the defense side, we should focus on what their defenses are, which witnesses they're picking apart, which ones that they're signaling to the judge he shouldn't believe. And then more importantly, the questions that the judge asks these people from the bench or how he cuts them off in what they're saying. We saw some examples of that already today. He's already told them he's not here to consider things that he's ruled on already. And one of the defense team made an argument concerning valuation of the properties now. He pointed out to them, it's not what they're worth now. It's what they were worth at the time when they were presenting them to the banks. So that's what we should be focusing on.
All right, let's talk about that in some detail. And we'll put up on the screen a list here, the civil fraud trial, of everything that, or most of the things that are being considered, just so our audience can follow along. Number one, you have this judge. Laura got into this a little bit, which is interesting, the judge handling the case. You have a $250 million fraud lawsuit brought by the AG in 2022. You have a president who's accused of misrepresenting his net worth. And you have certainly an outcome here that could be, impactful in terms of the former president's real estate empire. So the idea here that, and anybody who's followed the former president for years knows that if nothing else, he's been a serial exaggerator, always the best this, the biggest that, and that we know, but that there's not necessarily anything wrong with that until there is. And in this case, there might be, right? So where's that line as you see it that people should be looking for?
Well, there's nothing wrong with floating things and puffery and statements you make outside a courtroom or that are not on pieces of paper that you're swearing are truthful and that you're submitting to a bank for a mortgage, for a loan, to extend certain properties. Everybody's guilty of a little puffery in their own life. And it's one thing to say that outside of a courtroom. It's entirely a different thing to say that in official paperwork that's being filed with a bank to get a loan, to say that on the witness stand, to say that during the course of the deposition. So you should be focusing, and people who are watching this should be focusing on what was said in those legal papers, and then how that impacted the decision of the banks to perhaps loan him some money or push him up a list of people who they were going to loan money to. The fact that he was ultimately able to repay the money, that's what is at issue here. What's at issue is, what did you say things were worth at the time, and did you over or undervalue them? That's the fraud that was alleged. That's the fraud the court found existed with regard to that first count he granted partial summary judgment on.
Right.
So that's what the focus should be.
Now, the other thing that's come up just in terms of the president's overall net worth, sometimes you want to know how much money does a person have when they're applying for a loan. And this has, again, been well documented over the years that it's a person who's literally gotten into public fights with Forbes magazine about whether he's a billionaire or not, or how much of a billionaire he is. But in this particular case, his attorney had an answer for that earlier today, pointing to documents from Deutsche Bank that showed that the bank had valued his net worth, they say, $2 billion less than he did, but that they still gave him a loan. Is that a good argument from the Trump lawyers?
Well, that's an argument that they're going to make, and that's one that goes to the crux of what they're saying. Look, we put a value down, the bank didn't agree with the value, and they still gave us a loan. But again, that's not one that might carry the day. Look, when we're putting a piece of property up for sale, and you think it's worth X number of dollars, and you get an appraiser to come in, and the appraiser comes back and goes, well, that's nice. I don't think it's worth that much. It's worth this. That's what the bank relies upon. Right. So the fact that they said his worth was X plus, and the bank came back and says, no, it's X minus, but we're still going to take a chance. That's not where this fraud was that the attorney general is alleging. She's alleging the fraud was the over-evaluation that they put down on the piece of paper to begin with.
All right. David Weinstein, thank you very much. We're going to stay on top of this.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.